On First Down, you'll hear interviews with some of the top minds in sports, as well as actionable tips and strategies you can implement into your daily life to become a more effective coach. My name is Justin Tichenel, former college football player turned entrepreneur. Thanks for spending time with me today. Now, let's jump into the content. Today I'm here with Coach Dan Mullins. Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you.
So Coach Mullins is the Director of Athletic Performance and DC at Allatoona High School, which is down in Georgia. So to kick things off, Coach, can you just share with the audience a little bit about your background and how you've ultimately gotten involved in your current role?
For sure. Well, again, I appreciate you having me on and the work that you guys do. I think anytime people take the time to hear from coaches and allow us a platform to talk about, all things athletics, we operate in a very specific corner of athletics. And it's a little bit different. And there's everybody thinks when it comes to strength conditioning and it comes to football coaching, everybody has an opinion of how things should be done, and they all think they can do your job a little bit better than you can. So I always love talking to coaches who give us that platform and give us the opportunity to kind of talk about what we've been through, what we've gone through, and how we operate. So, but yeah, so I started out coaching in Ohio. I was a high school science teacher. In Ohio, they don't have, for the vast majority of the places, don't have strength conditioning or weights in the school day. So I was a science teacher, taught 7 periods of science, coached football, and did the strength conditioning outside of the school day. So even outside of football, I'm there till 7:30, 8 o'clock at night most days, and it's a little rough on the family when there's never a break. So I got connected with some people down here in Georgia and ended up making the move down here 2 years ago. And it's been awesome, having my day job, my quote unquote day job, being in the weight room and being able to do what I love to do there instead of after school allows me to be dad outside of football season at 3:30, 4 o'clock. So I'm very grateful for that and thankful for the chance to be down here. Kind of along the way, I've had some interesting experiences and had the opportunity to work with some great coaches. Um, I think first and foremost, I had the opportunity to intern at the University of Cincinnati under Coach Brady Collins and Coach Fickle in the summer before they made the 2020 or 21 run to the Final Four. So it was like Desmond Ritter's senior season, Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, all those guys, and had the opportunity to spend the summer with them and just learn really what hard coaching and hard training really looks like. Because I think, we all have this idea of what coaching hard really looks like and what it looks like from the outside, but being in that day-to-day ability to push guys and to coach them hard, but also love up on them outside of our training sessions and things like that. That was extremely formative for me, and it's shaped a lot of how how I coach and how I talk, how I communicate. So was very, very grateful for them and the staff that they had, and then came down here, and there's so many quality coaches in the state of Georgia that it's just you can throw a rock and hit people who can be head coaches in anywhere they wanted, and it's awesome because the thing about Georgia that I've noticed is the community of coaches are really, really good. And I don't mean that from their coaching ability, but they love to talk ball and they love to talk to each other and network and communicate and just grow as a whole. So there's people within our region that we get to talk to all the time about ball and talk about strength conditioning stuff. And at the end of the day, nobody tries to hide secrets or keep things behind a veil, because they know at the end of the day they're going to go out there and execute their plan better than you're able to implement their plan. So that's their plan, and that's how they do, and that it breeds this community down here that I think is different than a lot of places that I've seen. So and coaches I've talked to. So just grateful for really good coaches that have poured into me and along the way, and had some opportunities to coach some good kids and had a lot of support, and then it's been very formative in my life, and I'm grateful for each step along the way. So
Awesome. Well, it's really cool to hear about just the power of networking and how you talked about the Georgia coaching community. Can you talk about that and how that's had an impact on you, especially early on in your career?
for sure, I'm actually. It's funny. I'm presenting at a clinic here in a couple weeks, and I was working on my presentation the other day, and there's going to be a lot of guys in the room that have actually shaped the way that I coach and how I view things, and even where I am physically. And it's going to be it's going to be an honor to actually have the opportunity to speak and learn from some of those guys too. But originally, when I was in Ohio, there's a group called the NHSSCA. It stands for National High School Strength Coach Association, and they do a great job of putting on events, some of which are free, some of which are paid. And I ended up joining the association just because I've never had that community of coaches that have really helped to develop other coaches and really work to make the industry better as a whole. So I joined that. Let's see, that would have been my second year in coaching, and then they gave me the first opportunity I had to speak, and it was awesome. It was a good time. Made a ton of mistakes, and it was fun. Everybody afterwards, of course, was like, "Oh, you did great." I'm like, "I know I didn't, but thanks for telling me I did anyway." So met a lot of people through the NHSSCA, and that's actually how I got to Georgia. So there's a guy, really well known guy in the state. He's one of the best in the business. His name's Ronnie Jankovic. He's a strength coach at Roswell High School and coaches O line with him too. He's been a head coach in Illinois. He played college football. He's done it all, and he's one of those guys that just love people and love to help people in any way they can, and does anything for anyone that's good people. So he's definitely one that has helped me a lot throughout the way. But connected with him on Twitter, just talking about. I think our first time we ever talked was he had posted something about lifting for Christmas, and he had dressed up as Buddy the Elf. And I messaged him. And I said, "Man," I said, that looks like a lot of fun. Like he had done lights all throughout the weight room and all this and that, and then dressed up as Buddy the Elf on the last day of school for their lifts. And started messaging back and forth, and then he's talking to me, and ends up saying, like, telling me to come down to Georgia. Like I had expressed, some how awesome it would be to have strength conditioning on the school day and at the school I was at in Ohio. And it wasn't going to work out. And so with the hours I was working and all that, the things I already mentioned about, being dad outside of football season and after practice and all that stuff. Um, he really encouraged me to make the trip south, and he connected me with some people and started that conversation. And my wife was awesome enough to pick up and move 8 hours away from home to kind of allow me to. For some reason, I guess she wanted to spend more time with me. So she was fun to. It was fun to that entire process of looking around the state, and then he started connecting me to other coaches. There's a couple Twitter pages that run, job postings. And there's some people down here that really do their best to connect quality coaches to quality people. And that was it, man. They connected me to different people. There's like Coach Ahmad Tinker. He does a lot in this area as far as recruiting and getting people together and things like that. And then, on top of it, it's just been a matter of ever since coming down here. Um, just being able to talk to people, there's been steps along the way where coaches have reached out to ask questions, and people, I'm one that doesn't naturally initiate conversations. Like when you go to coaches clinics and stuff like that, I'm usually like hanging out on the side, but not because I don't like to talk to people, but also I think highly of other people's time. So in my opinion, I'm like, well, I don't want to go interrupt, or I don't want to inconvenience them or anything like that. So that's kind of hard for me to break. So I kind of sit over on the side. But there's been people within the state that have really pushed me to kind of get outside of my comfort zone and meet people and actually network. And I found it extremely valuable to do so. Once I got kind of that thought process out of my head and actually went and talked to people. I also don't think too highly of my systems or the way that I do things. So like part of that conversation is, well, what do I bring to the table to offer them? And I think that's one of those things that you just have to get over as a coach. And it's not always about that, but maybe there's something little that you do, however insignificant you think it is, that they can find value in. So, um, being able to use that and frame the conversation and be able to talk to people as if it's not an inconvenience for them, it's not an inconvenience for me, and just talk to people to just get to know them. So that social networking piece has been huge, because without that, I wouldn't even be in the state that I'm in. So it's definitely a very powerful tool to help grow closer to people when we don't necessarily live conveniently close enough to each other. So it's made a lot of connections for me.
Definitely. And just talking more about those connections and some of the influences that you've had, can you just share some of the coaching philosophies that you've learned from some of your mentors over the years?
Yeah, for sure. So I think one the biggest piece and biggest component of my coaching philosophy is that my kids, or the athletes, I refer to them as my kids, but the athletes that I coach, they all need to know that I care about them. And I think that's where everything that we do starts, because I do coach really hard, and that comes again from my time at Cincinnati, where I was able to see really what that looks like when you can push a kid to a point where they think they're going to break, but we know that physically they're not, and that we know that their team needs to see them in that environment. So being able to love on kids, and I think a big piece of that comes from a book called Conscious Coaching by Brett Bartholomew. And I recommend that book to absolutely anybody that coaches or interacts with student athletes at any level. But what it does is it identifies a lot of the personality types and how to coach them better, and to be able to identify kids that need to hear things certain ways. So I think that's a huge piece, is that a lot of the kids that we're interacting with, they each have their own story. They're all coming into the weight room, or they're coming to practice. They're walking the halls, and there's 16 hours or 12 hours if you're in season, outside of the day, where they're not with us. And those interactions that happen outside, whether it's their girlfriend breaking up with them, their mom or dad had a fight, they got yelled at their job, whatever the case may be, they're going to bring those interactions in with them. So um, my ability to convey, like, hey, I'm here for you. If you need anything, I'm a good listener. I don't always have the right words to say, but I can listen to you. I can encourage you. I can love up on you. And just for them to know that regardless of what happens in our session, and regardless of how much I push them or how much I may yell, like it's out of the spirit that I want the best for them. Because my goal, in the first thing when I got to Allatoona, one of the first things that I told to our kids was that I'm number one, I'm never going to lie to you. I'm going to tell you how it is. And that may not always be comfortable. But at the end of the day, you're never going to have to wonder what if the words coming out of my mouth are the truth. Then number two, I told them I was going to coach them very hard, because my goal and I was hired not because, I'm not hired to be their friend. I'm not hired to be their hype man. I'm hired to be their coach and to get the absolute best out of them that is humanly possible. And the ability to draw out of somebody their best is an uncomfortable process. Nobody got to become the best version of themselves by doing things comfortably. So that's my purpose, and my goal is to communicate that with them. That my goal is to make them the best version of themselves as possible, while still letting them know that I care about them, I love them, and that it's all out of the spirit of making them the best version of themselves, the best team. And knowing that football or basketball or whatever sport they're playing, that's secondary. I care more about the person, and I care more about what they're going to do with their life than I do, how many points they scored last night or how many tackles they had. So knowing I care about them, knowing I'm going to coach them hard, knowing that we're always going to do what's best for them, and then I'm never going to put them through, especially in the weight room. I'm never going to put them through something that jeopardizes them. I'm always going to have the game in mind. We're never going to just do something to do it. We're never going to just do something simply because it's hard. We're going to do something because it's going to get them better at insert sport or athletics in general. So, and then on the football side of things, just the discipline, man. I think um, football is a sport that you have to be disciplined to play. There's so many things that can go wrong from an offensive perspective, defensive perspective, special teams. It's all about discipline, and having 11 people that are willing to set themselves aside and what they want aside. We talk often about the ability to make plays for other people. Meaning, for instance, if you're a D lineman, there's going to be times where you have to fight into a double team where it might be easier to just not and allow that second blocker to slip up to the second level. But at the end of the day, the team needs you to do this so that linebacker behind you can stay clean and come through and make that tackle, or whatever the case may be. There's 1,000 situations and scenarios you can apply it to, but each person on that field, all 11, have to be aligned and know that it's not what's best for me, it's what's best for our team that's going to make the best outcome. So that's the part about football that I love. I think it's the most it embodies unselfishness, and it embodies love, and it embodies discipline. And that's why I love the game, man. I love the game of football.
Yeah. And it's just like you were saying, it's the perfect life teacher because, you're going to run into adversity, and in life, there's going to be things that come up, and you need to know how to overcome that. And you need to be disciplined. Like, you have to have and I talked about this on another episode, but what's called long-term temporal perspective, sacrificing what's better in the long term for what you actually want to do now. And even if, you know, you might not want to do something now, but you have to have that perspective that, hey, this is what I need to do in the long term. And just going back on what you were saying earlier, really hit home with me when you were just saying that the process of getting better is never comfortable. Like, you look at some of the best athletes out there, whether it be Michael Jordan, LeBron James, some of those guys, like they weren't really liked by their teammates. Like, and it's not about being a friend, it's about doing what's best for the team. And in the long run, like, I've had coaches that, looking back at it, maybe I didn't like in that moment, but I thank them for the way that they pushed me in the long term. And that's what you need to grow.
Oh, no doubt. And I can't remember who said it. It was either Kobe, Michael, it was somebody like that, but they said, leadership is lonely. It's one of those paths where if you're doing it right, you're going to make some people upset at you. And that's okay. Like, you have to be willing to be able to understand that those relationships, while yes, we want them. Yes, we want everybody involved and we want everyone engaged. But at the end of the day, leadership is a lonely path. Like, it is difficult at times because you do have to be able to call people out. You do have to be able to make hard decisions that don't necessarily work in favor of everybody that's involved. Like, if you think of it from a coach's perspective, even, like, there's reasons why the second and third team corner are the second and third team corner, right? Like, there's a reason for everybody to have a starter. Well, I still need that second and that third string corner to be able to be engaged. I have to be able to give them the conversations of why they're in the position that they're in, even though that's not necessarily going to be a comfortable thing for them to hear. But if I'm able to convey to them, hey, here are your weaknesses. Here's why player A is starting and you're not. Here are some things that you can work on. Then that's coaching. That's the ability to identify, hey, these are the areas that we get better in, and also frame it in a way that's not demoralizing, because that can be for some kids, especially in the high school setting, like 14 to 16-year-old kids. They don't necessarily know how to deal with those kind of conversations. At the end of the day, we have to be able to take those conversations and frame them in a way to motivate that athlete, because if they end up getting better, it's just going to do it. The only thing it's going to do is push themselves, but also push the person in front of them to get better. Or there's going to be a change, there's going to be a change in that roster order. But yeah, leadership is lonely. Like, we have to be able to have those uncomfortable conversations and be able to take ourselves to those uncomfortable areas in order to grow, because that's where growth happens too.
Yes, sir. Any last words you want to share with the audience today?
I don't think so. At the I've heard multiple times over and over again. Remember why we do this. Remember why we got into it. Especially this time of year, being the end of semester and about to start another one. That winter emotional lull or social emotional lull for us as coaches can be easy to fall into when the weather's gray and everything's, the football season's really far off or summer's really far off and all those things. Just be able to talk to people around, to talk to other coaches. We're not the only ones that go through those kind of things, and I think staying connected really helps. And it really helps to have those people in your circle that are going to support you, that are going to tell me where I'm wrong, and tell me those things that I don't necessarily want to hear, but need to hear. And this is a great time to develop that circle, and really have that time develop those guys that I can lean on, those coaches that I can call when things get tough down the road, but also just to call, check up on, and hang out with too. So make sure we take care of each other. Not everything we do is a competition. You can save that for football season, or save that for basketball season, whenever the time is. So
Yes, sir. Well, thank you very much, Coach, for sharing, and it was a pleasure talking with you today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.